So Auburn makes its second Sweet 16 of Bruce Pearl's tenure. We also are doing our second postgame podcast of the night. Auburn 82, Creighton 70. Auburn makes its first Sweet 16 since 2019, when you were my age, and you're like
We're not doing
30
this.
now.
So Auburn takes down Creighton here inside of Rupp Arena. Yes, we got some technical difficulties earlier, so apologies for another boring backdrop here. But yeah, I mean, this is a game, Patrick, where we went in and there was all those conversations about effort and energy and whether Auburn was, right click synonym, whatever you wanted to talk about with all the storylines really for the last 48 hours that kind of stemmed from that Alabama State performance. It was clear 45 seconds into this game that was not going to be a problem. Really high level basketball for Auburn today, but it was one where they kind of just had to weather the storm. Really, in the first half, there was really nothing else you could do. Obviously, they did make some defensive adjustments, but Creighton made 9 threes in the first half, and that's something that you and I talked about going into this game because we watched them play Louisville. They made 9 threes in the first half against Louisville. It's like, if they do that against Auburn, of course they're going to have a chance to win. You're sitting at halftime saying, is this going to regress? If Creighton continues to be hot, obviously they're going to have a great opportunity to win this game. It did regress. Creighton still ends up shooting 44% from three in the game. This is their first game all season that they have lost shooting better than 37% from three. They were previously 11-0. Now they're 11-1. And I think that obviously Bruce Pearl talked about it, over and over again, that this season was only going to go as far as defense would take Auburn. Some good defensive adjustments there in the second half, but really, Patrick, I mean, this was a defensive performance, and this was a first half where Auburn would play great defense for 20-25 seconds of the shot clock, and highlighted by the fact that Ryan Kalkbrenner banks in a three. I think that was their first 3-pointer of the game for Creighton. They were just making some really tough shots, and you knew those weren't going to continue throughout the game. If they did, obviously Creighton was going to have a great chance to win. But I think credit to Auburn for they went into halftime and they were that was Bruce Pearl's message. It was like, you're down by 2 and they've made 9 threes. I think they sort of understood that. They kept their heads about them, and obviously it definitely died down in the second half.
Yeah, that was kind of the interesting thing, is it was like we got to halftime and I was like, I feel like Auburn is playing really good defense. Yeah. They just made but they also made 9 threes, which is the recipe for disaster if you were going to lose. And it was kind of that subtle confidence of I feel pretty strongly if we keep playing this way, Auburn's mindset, right? If we keep playing this way defensively, they're not going to do that again. They clearly didn't. I think they went 3 of 12, the rest 13. Of 13 the rest of the way. And so, that's what we saw. As you said, we don't have to talk about the effort and energy stuff anymore. Every opponent from here on out is going to be a big name. It is what it is. But yeah, immediately. But it was, as you said, late in the shot clock, several times they just banked in a 3, and both the Pearls, Steven and Bruce, just beside themselves, very animated on the sidelines, oh, you were doing so well, and something happened, right? And so, I think ultimately for Auburn, it's you were able to. I think there's something to be said for you were able to withstand that, right? They made 9 threes, and you weren't down by 10. You were down by 2. So when you went on your run in the second half, when they did slow down, and we'll talk about this later, but when Chad Baker mentioned they did get tired a little bit at Creighton, you were able to build a big lead, and it wasn't, oh, we're coming back, we're only now up by 5.
Correct.
And that ultimately gave you the game.
Yeah, there were some big individual performances for Auburn in the second half. This was a game where Janai Broome was not his usual dominant self. All leading up to this game, it was, and myself included, all of us, the All-American matchup between Ryan Kalkbrenner, who was arguably the best defensive big man in the country. Yep. Janai Broome is arguably the best offensive big man / offensive player in the country. What was going to give? I think Kalkbrenner was better on the defensive end. Broome only goes 4 of 13 in this game. It was one of those Janai Broome games, though, where he just misses some of them, that maybe he's made previously. But it was the guards for Auburn. Guard play wins in March. And Tournament Tahaad had another fantastic game today. Now 39 points for him in his first 2 NCAA tournament games. 23 points, went 2 of 3 from beyond the arc, 7 of 8 at the foul line, 6 rebounds and 3 assists. So not a shabby Saturday night for the freshman. As such, they gave him the placard in the locker room to slap on the bracket that Auburn is moving on to the next round. Look, Patrick, we've talked. It's Tahaad Pettiford. He's not a freshman. We don't consider him a freshman anymore. Like, whatever. We've heard Auburn say, all those different kinds of things all season long. Point being that we knew he had this kind of capability to be a really big player for them. In March, you look at him, he walks, talks, and acts and plays like a guy who is, we've seen over the years, a really big performer in the month of March. But even more so than just his scoring, like the full court press of Creighton, it was impressive late in the game. Like it was difficult when it came down to just a 7-point game, just like that, a 7-0 run after Auburn was up by 14. Things were a little dicey, and they kept Tahaad Pettiford on the floor. He played 17 of the 20 minutes in the second half. He split some of those traps in the backcourt and was able to advance the ball and obviously getting up the floor, getting into the offense. He split a trap to make a floater there late in the game. He hit 5 free throws in the last 2 minutes of the game. Another clutch performance. We knew the Tennessee game when he went 0 of 8 and didn't score. We knew that was going to be an outlier. We knew he was going to come back from that because what have we seen all season from Tahaad Pettiford? And that is that away from home, he steps up against Auburn's biggest opponents. Obviously, now moving into the Sweet 16 in the second weekend, if that continues to be the case, that's going to be a great thing for this team because we know by now the kind of boost that their freshman guard gives them.
Yeah, and again, it's like the thing I was watching for in the first half was Tahaad and also Chaney, who finished with all 8 in the first half. It was for both of them. They struggled in the SEC tournament. For Chaney, it went back a little bit longer, and it was like, okay, for Auburn to want to make this run, they can. Obviously, the starters have to play great, and the stars have to play great, and they kind of both are bigger stars on this team. But it's like, okay, the bench, like they're going to have to produce too. Yeah. Auburn's depth is important, and they did that against Alabama State, but there was a little bit of like, okay, like great, it sure. is, metrics wise the worst team you played all season, but immediately it was like, no, they came to play. They are playing better. Like that was true of what we saw against Alabama State. And I don't know, like the thing for Tahaad is like, yeah, I mean, like you think about the guys he hangs out with in the locker room and we always see him with, Janai or Miles. Like he hangs with the veterans. He acts like a veteran. He might as well be one. And I mean, that's what we saw today.
Yeah, and the guard play overall for Auburn was fantastic. Honestly, it's reminiscent. You and I were talking about this of the game against Kentucky here at Rupp Arena, where Miles Kelly, Chad Baker-Mazara, and Denver Jones combined for 72 points in that game. Kentucky only scored 78 points as a team. In the second half today against Creighton, Tahaad Pettiford, Chad Baker-Mazara, and Denver Jones, they combined for 39 points. Creighton as a team scores 33 points after halftime. And so you hate to just hit the cliche over and over again that guard play wins in March, but especially when your player of the year center is in maybe the worst matchup for him possible because it's one of the best defensive big men. Now, Michigan's got really good big guys as well. They're going to need Janai Broome to get going, but they were able to do all of that despite him not having a tremendous offensive performance. Chad Baker-Mazara was a huge reason why. Has a hip injury there in the second half. He said he got kneed in the hip. He told us after the game, like, he's like, oh, by the next time we play, like I'll be fine. He seemed fine. He was clearly in pain toward the second half of that game, and he even checked back in the second half, but like gave it a couple rotations, and it was clear like, all right, he's in too much pain to keep going. But he was a huge spark plug for this team out of halftime. You mentioned the 2-point deficit at halftime. That disappeared pretty quickly. Denver Jones hit a 3 on Auburn's first possession in the second half, and then Chad Baker-Mazara delivered 9 points in a very, very quick span, finished as a 17 in the game. You talked about the guards getting more downhill. Chad Baker-Mazara said after the game, the coaching staff in one of the huddles and one of the timeouts made sure to point out, like, hey, they're getting fatigued. You guys need to get downhill. Don't shoot so many threes. What happened against Alabama State? We heard guys after the game say, maybe a little too complacent, like taking too many threes early in the shot clock. They were clearly aggressive in this game. And then Denver Jones. It was a really, really good performance for him. Number one, his defense on Stephen Ashworth. Here's a stat that Jason talked about. I didn't even bring this up in the first version of the podcast that is no longer with us. So this is a new stat we have for the second one. Stephen Ashworth scored 11 points in the first 12 minutes of the game. Remember, he started 3 of 4 from deep. Do you know how many points he had the rest of the game? 2. Do you know when those points came? It was garbage time, and they let him walk to the basket because it was like they were up by double digits, and it's like you just don't want to hit a 3. He literally just walked to the basket. That is what Auburn did against this point guard who was really, really good. That is what they did against one of Creighton's most important players for the remainder of the game. And so credit, of course, goes to Denver Jones. But then offensively, Denver Jones has the kill shot for Auburn late in the game. His teammates were kind of saying afterwards, like, they're not sure how he got that one to go. But it is a reminder of, like, look, Denver Jones gets a lot of credit as a defensive player. He gets a lot of credit as, like, he's a good, 3-point shooter. This is a guy who averaged 20 points a game. He was the second leading scorer in Conference USA when he came over from FIU. This is a guy who can get downhill. We've seen that element of his game kind of develop this season. And so CBM and Denver Jones, I thought were a monster reason why Auburn was so effective in this game. One more person we'll give the flowers to. You mentioned Chaney Johnson. Like, yes, really, really good to see him. Those little turnaround shots, like that is what works for him, and it worked in 2 games here in Lexington. Dylan Cardwell. We talked about this. This may be his best performance of the season, given context, like given circumstances. Plus 21 in this game. His defense against Ryan Kalkbrenner was fantastic, and more so than that, like when him and Janai got pulled to the perimeter, it wasn't a downside for them. It was never a detriment to Auburn. Dylan Cardwell talked the talk this week. He called out his teammates. Yeah. He made sure to be like, I'm not leaving. I don't want to go home. I'm going to hold all these team meetings. The free breakfast. I want more free breakfast. I thought it was important for him, for your 5th-year senior. He went out and walked the walk in this game. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, that was the thing, is I was looking at the people next to me, at the game at halftime, and I was like, I mean, he's got a couple points, and I think he had ended 3 for 3 from the field, but I was like, just overall, like the way he's playing, especially defensively, I was like, I think this is his best game of the entire season. He's had other games where he's had double-doubles and got close to it in Maui and all that stuff, but I mean, just all-around performance today. I mean, huge for him, especially with Janai struggling a little bit more offensively. You could argue, and I thought it was interesting, and we both wrote the stories, and we went in the Creighton locker room, and they were like, whoever wins the battle of the bigs, the all-American thing, is going to win this game. And I guess points-wise and some other metrics, you could argue Creighton won that. But at the end of the day, like, Auburn's bigs did enough. And even when Auburn, and this was a concern I had even at halftime, I was like, okay, like, Auburn's shown they can take away the perimeter. And in a lot of ways, they did that in the second half. I was like, but are they going to start driving in? Is that where, the battle of the bigs gets heightened? And, I mean, I guess Creighton did a little bit of that, but, like, it clearly took away their offense when they could make the threes. And Auburn's bigs did exactly what they needed to do against an All-American matchup.
I think the 2 numbers you can look at in this game when you're saying, like, okay, the battle on the inside, when you look at overall, both lineups, more than just one player or more than just 2 players, I think the 2 numbers that show you that Auburn won that regard, won that advantage, won that matchup in the game. Plus 10 rebounding. By the way, everybody, a double-digit rebounding advantage. I know that was a huge concern toward the end of the regular season. This team is giant. This Creighton team is.
Well, and Janai for him not having the points and stuff, he had 12 rebounds. He had 5 offensive boards. I mean, like, that matters too. Yeah.
Plus 10 on the boards, plus 16 in points in the paint. I thought that mattered a lot. Plus 18 in points in the paint for Auburn. And so, like, when you look at that side of things, they were able to get downhill. Kalkbrenner's great, but I asked Tahaad Pettiford a couple days ago, like, how do you go after it? I asked him, like, what's the mindset when you're a guard and you're 6'2" or shorter and you're driving down the lane and you see a guy who's 7'1" waiting at the basket? Like, what do you do against that? He said, you have to trust that our offensive action is going to get him under the rim. And I thought he did a really good job of explaining, like, if that's the case, then what you can do, obviously you're not going to go right at him and let him block a shot, but if he's farther under the rim, he's going to have to come out to you. If he does, that opens up passing lanes, but obviously if he stays there and he waits for you, you shoot floaters. How many times did Auburn shoot a floater today, particularly Tahaad Pettiford and Chad Baker-Mazara? I don't know what percentage they shot on those, but it seemed like every time they put them up, they converted. And so it was a good overall performance for Auburn, I thought, on both ends of the floor. I thought this could have been I'm not saying that Creighton wasn't in this game late, because they absolutely were. Auburn had to make plays down the stretch, but like a couple more threes don't go down that are ridiculous for them in the first half. A couple more inside shots like Janai and I think Chaney had 1 or 2 where it was like right at the rim and they just kind of missed them. All of a sudden you're looking at, you have the lead probably the entire game. And so I think it was, maybe except for a couple little corners that you couldn't quite turn, I think it was a really, really good all-around performance for this Auburn team. They did a good job of talking about, like, players making scouting reports. That's why these guys play the game. That's why they know what they're talking about. Tahaad makes that scouting report about going against Kalkbrenner. I asked Dylan Cardwell, and he made the comparison, like, hey, Kalkbrenner reminds me of Walker Kessler. How do you slow down those pick and rolls? And he was like, well, what you have to do is you have to bump him right before he goes into the pick and roll, kind of throw off the timing so they can't just lob it to him. I saw Chaney Johnson go out and hedge him on the perimeter so many times. So they did a really good job of executing. And that, look, Bruce, you and I watched him in that first game. Livid. I mean, like, I'm not sure I've seen him so angry over the course of, and I know it kind of sounds silly. It's like, oh, it's Bruce Pearl. He really doesn't, for as much as people say it, like, he's not angry the whole game, really. That's not really what he does. Steven maybe, but Bruce is not. And so, like, he was livid that whole game against Alabama State, and it was execution. He just felt like you're not going and doing the things that we are putting you in positions to do. I thought they did a much better job of that today because, look, beating this Creighton team was playing really, really well. Beating this team by 12 and having what you felt like was a really good second half, really good sign for an Auburn team that felt like they definitely didn't play their best game in the first game of the tournament on Thursday.
No, but I mean, you can tell like they rose to the occasion. They came out firing, and I mean, again, they withstood the storm. They didn't get down 10. They didn't let Creighton go on some big 9-0 run or something. And again, like the first half, and we talked about this, I guess, on the first one. Like, how many times like Creighton went and hit a big three, Auburn immediately answered. Auburn hit a big three. I mean, they were just trading shots for so much of it. But at the end of the day, Auburn still did the little things they had to do in the first half to put them in position to win at the end. And now they get to go to the Sweet 16 and play in Atlanta.
Yep. And as we've talked about many times, this felt like, and it's silly to be like, oh, this was a big game. Like, oh, yeah, the game where if you lose, your season's over. Naturally, when you're in the NCAA tournament, it's a big game. But it would have felt like a missed opportunity not to get to Atlanta.
Put it lightly.
Because, and you said this on the deceased first version of the podcast, you kind of now get to reap your benefits of a number one overall seed season. You put yourself in position to where it was like, you're going to be in Lexington, you're going to be in the South region, you're going to be in Atlanta. And if you had gotten to the end of this thing and you had lost this game and that Atlanta carrot was kind of just dangling in front of you and you never were able to grab it, it would just, you would kind of go into the offseason like kind of feeling what if? Like, man, what if Auburn had been able to get back to State Farm? What if they had been able to play with some mojo in the round of 32 and carry that through? And I just think, and they go up against a Michigan team now that is very potent. Obviously, they are very, very familiar with a lot of names and faces on this team. Trey Donaldson, KT Harrell, and Danny Wolf obviously come to mind. This is a team that's played very, very well. They won the Big Ten tournament. Obviously, now they're in the Sweet 16 with a first-year coach. This team had 24 losses last year, Michigan did, and now they're in the Sweet 16. So, I mean, it's a great turnaround for them. But you just felt like Auburn fans were waiting. Auburn fans had already bought tickets to Atlanta. This felt like a getting over the hump moment, and maybe from the outside looking in, you don't really think that because this is the number one overall seed. And yes, you should go to the second weekend if you're the number one overall seed. Given what Auburn has done in the tournament recently under Bruce Pearl, this was a big sigh of relief game, I think, to where, hey, now let's just get to the second weekend and let's see what kind of damage we can do in this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a video of Pearl walking off the court. I mean, I'm sure I was running through the concourse trying to get to the locker room, but I saw the video afterwards, and it almost just kind of looked more like sigh of relief, like, okay, we did it. And that's not to say he wasn't happy or anything. I'm sure he was. But it's like, again, like, Auburn didn't want us to have to sit here and have the conversation of, like, so they had the 2 All-Americans that one time, and they didn't go to the Sweet 16. They won the SEC tournament and didn't even make it to the round of 32. And now they have maybe their best team ever and don't get, like,
Right.
This team is worthy of that. And I mean, I don't know. It doesn't always work this way. Obviously, last year is an example, and the other ones I mentioned of, like, where did Auburn finish the season? Like, where they were ranked, that's the round they should get to. That's kind of crazy expectations for this team because that's all the way to the championship.
Sure.
And that is their goal, right? But for so many of them, I mean, the question was asked to Dylan and some of the older guys. I'm like, okay, you've been on a lot of these teams that have just come up short in March, or it hadn't been working at the end, and y'all were able to get over the hump this time. And all of them just knowing, like, we get to go play in Atlanta. It's a building we're familiar with. Obviously, they killed Ohio State back in December in that building. But, I mean, you think, like, how many times has Dylan Cardwell played in State Farm Arena for Auburn? They play every year, right? Yeah. And so it's a place they're comfortable with. Obviously, it's an easy drive. It's an easy drive for the fans. I mean, I would have felt bad for our subscribers that already bought all the tickets, and now you have to resell them. That'd be tough. But and that's the thing. As you said, I guess I said, that's a lot of words. Like, you get to reap the reward, being the number one overall seed, getting to play in front of your people. I was trying to think. Obviously, they're going to play Michigan. Who's on the other side? I guess it'd be Michigan State,
Iowa State.
Michigan and Michigan State, the same thing.
That's you could play Michigan and Michigan State back to back. You could.
Yeah, well, yeah. Nice state. They have Bledsoe Flakes.
I don't even know what you just said. You have
the Great Lakes.
The Iowa State. I thought you said something about flakes. Yeah, I mean, like, it's you. If you're Auburn, if you had not gotten to the place where you have the number one alumni group in the country, you just would have felt like a bit of a missed opportunity. And so this was there's really no other way to put it, of course, now, because you're back in the Sweet 16 and it is such a monumental NCAA tournament game. best game of the season, of course, for Auburn. Most important game of the season because it is the next one and it is the one that kept you from going home. But I thought this Auburn team showed up today. I thought they responded to some challenges that were prickly, some challenges that were not fun for them to talk about the last few days, and not necessarily an enjoyable response when, like, you made it to the tournament, you're the number one overall seed, and you won a game by 20, and it just really just kind of felt glum after that. And so now they're in a position where maybe you feel like they've got their mojo back. And go, like you said, it's not just that it's State Farm Arena. It's they have played they're about to play a Big Ten team. They played 3 straight Big Ten teams there, and they have just killed every single one of them.
This will be the best one they play.
Ohio, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Ohio State, Indiana, and Nebraska, and they just played so well against all those teams. It will be familiar. It will be comfortable. It will be easy travel. And like you said, it is this team now putting itself in position to continue to make history. And so Auburn takes down Creighton today. It was a wonderful environment, by the way. A high level neutral site basketball environment. Auburn fans really showed out in this game. They were. I will say they were impressively, and not that like it's bad for Auburn. Like I'm like putting Auburn fans down for like sometimes sitting on their hands. Like that's what college basketball is about. Like when someone delivers a shot on the other end, it's like, you cheer when there's stuff to cheer about. I thought they were really impressive today of like every single opportunity to that group behind the bench, every opportunity to like stand and go nuts. They were like, no, we're not leaving until this team gets a win. I thought that helped Auburn on a day where they needed some momentum.
It's like they knew it was on the line too, right?
Yep.
I mean, they probably know as good as the players or anything else that Auburn hadn't been to the Sweet 16 since 2019, yeah. And now you're 30. I mean, they knew it was on the line, and from here on out, you know what's on the line, and that is March, right? And we talk about it, and I mean, we've said this I guess twice now, but like obviously Auburn played well, blah 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 blah, but there is no style points. It's all about. Yep. Did you win the game? Yep. If Auburn wins by 1, every game from here on out, they win the championship. And so that's the goal, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I think Atlanta's going to be a really fun atmosphere. Obviously going to be a lot of great teams there, and we'll do the whole thing again in a week.
Absolutely. We will be back there. Again, like Patrick said, we'll do the whole thing. We'll be talking to Trey Donaldson and KT Harrell, getting their thoughts on things and getting ready for a matchup against Michigan that will be really, really intriguing. Double big versus double big. You don't get to see that very often. Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf for Michigan, Janai Broom and Dylan Cardwell for Auburn, and then Trey Donaldson, whom he's next in line. Denver Jones. Like, how cool is that you get to play?
You get to play Aiden twice, obviously, and
correct.
Now you get to do this.
And in the Sweet 16, and Trey's having a great season in Michigan. Like Bruce has said it before, like that move worked out so well, and they didn't want Trey to leave. They did not want Trey to leave.
No.
He never said he didn't want Aiden to leave, but they didn't want Trey to leave, and it's obviously worked out well for both sides. And so we knew there were narratives abound in the South region with Texas A&M, Yale, and Michigan. UC San Diego was like the only one where it was like, like we don't really know that team. So if they end up playing them, there won't really be much. But now it's Michigan, where there's a lot of connections there, and should be a phenomenal game. We'll get into the matchup this week. We'll get into previewing all of that, and we will see you guys in Atlanta next week. And so for Patrick Bingham, I am Nathan King. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on the Auburn Undercover podcast. When it is currently 1:28 Eastern time in the morning here at Rupp Arena, we're going to sign off after this. So thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you guys so much for following along all week. Patrick did a great job. Jason Caldwell, Philip Marshall, myself, we were all here. I thought we did a great job covering this event the last few days, and obviously it was super important considering Auburn is off to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2019. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to y'all soon. I feel like you want to say one last thing, don't you?
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
Yeah, that sounds about right.